Welcome to the EMEA Recruitment Podcast in partnership with our friends at Operation Smile. If you can help us raise vital funds for Operation Smile, please visit emearecruitment.eu/operation-smile. In this episode, we speak to Debbie Brupbacher, a leadership transformation coach and co-founder of Permanent Beta. Debbie believes that we're all leaders at some point in our lives and explains why we should all make time for self-reflection.
So hello everybody, welcome to the next episode of the EMEA Recruitment Podcast in partnership with our good friends over at Operation Smile. As my colleague Rose mentioned, we're delighted to welcome Debbie to the podcast today. So hopefully Debbie, you can hear me okay?
I can hear you very well. Thanks, Paul.
Perfect. So where do we find you today? What part of the world?
I'm in Bern, Switzerland. So not so sunny, a little bit wet. But I'm excited to be here and talk to you today. I love what you're doing in the podcast, and I love the element of Operation Smile. I think that's wonderful. So well done.
Oh, that's great. No, thank you for the kind words there. And I know we've got a good range of questions to go through, actually. You know, some of these questions have come from our, internal networks, some externally, so hopefully, it'll be interesting for you, but won't challenge you too much. But I think it'll be an interesting, conversation to go through. So I'm looking forward to it as well. And I think, before we really go into the bulk of the questions, I mean, clearly it's very difficult to have a podcast with anybody at this stage without asking them about the last year and a half, as we've all faced challenges in our home and work lives, But I think what I've found is that a lot of people that we've interviewed on the podcast have tried to find a positive angle to the COVID situation and maybe have tried to find things they've learned from it that can help them, in future life. So I thought, trying to put a positive spin on the whole COVID thing, I thought it'd be a good question to ask you, what, if anything, you've learned from this the last 15, 16 months, and if there's anything positive you can you could give some insights on from your point of view.
Yeah, it's certainly been a challenging few months or year and a half. And I've learned quite a few things from it, I would say, for sure. And I kind of summarize that by three things: resilience, reflection, and growth. And resilience is, right at the very beginning is I made the decision to kind of cut back on what I was working on and spend that time with my daughter. She's a teenager, so, they don't want to spend time with you at this age, do they? So I was very lucky. And I still look at it now and think, oh gosh, that was probably the best quality time we were able to share together. And probably the last, at least for some time anyhow, as a teenager. So I love that I was able to adapt to that right from the beginning. And also, as it went on, there was different adaptations that had to happen, of course. And this allowed me to really take some time and reflect. I think many of us have been reflecting over this year and a half. And one thing it really taught me was my lifestyle and what I was slipping into, especially this working at home. Many of us have slipped into, and I for certainly sure have picked up a bad habit of, some extra eating or extra drinking. So I was able to take that time out to reflect on what I could do to change and what I wanted for my life and my business. And so that kind of brings me into the third one, is just growing into the areas where I really wanted to be and where I wanted to take my business, and just be really grateful that actually this year and a half has given me that space and that time to do it. So I've kind of loved it in some ways, but it's really helped me, have that resilience, reflection, and growth.
I mean, it's interesting to hear, and it's, I think, as mentioned earlier, if you do look hard enough, there's positives there, and it sounds like, as you say, you've taken the time out to really reflect on where you are, to see where you want to go to, and been very resilient to the challenges that are there. And I think, obviously, I've known you for a number of years, Debbie, and I know you've had a an unusual career, probably, I would say, and which has led you to the leadership transformation coaching that you're doing. So I thought it'd be good to ask you really around your thoughts on leadership and transformation, given that's the area that you're focused on. So, I mean, do you think this approach is something that is within people already, or do you think it is something that you can be taught?
So I'm thinking we're all leaders, is what my belief is, and at different times in our lives we're leaders. So if you look at kids, they can be a leader in their sports club. Looking at parents, we're a leader in a family, or in our friendship circle, we're leaders. So I do believe we're all leaders in our own life, and it's just how we bring that out. And that's a large part of the work I do, where I focus really around how to bring that self-leadership out, how to help people really learn to bring out their full potential and lead a life that's fulfilling to them. So I think it begins with self-awareness and being vulnerable with themselves, to be really clear on where they're going and identifying the areas that they want to grow into and develop. So it's a journey as well, a journey that starts, as an adolescent, and then through your career and growing up in that career, you expand and evolve as a leader. So I think it's a journey, and it's in everybody. And sometimes having a coach can help bring that out. Others can do it quite easily, but having that extra person coaching you and walking with you can really help you develop those skills that you want to look at.
Yeah, because I guess you mentioned it there yourself. From what, even going back to what you were talking about earlier through the COVID period, you've taken time out to reflect on where you want to be. And I guess, you mentioned there earlier on about, being clear on people where they want to go and lead a life that's fulfilling to them. And I suppose it is one of those things that, people will have a busy diary, they'll put appointments in their diary, whether Zoom calls, team calls, hairdressing appointments, whatever it may be, but they were very unlikely to put appointments in their diary to say a time of reflection, that kind of thing doesn't go into their diaries very often. Do you think that's one of the biggest challenges people have, is that they don't put time aside to actually reflect on these things?
Yeah, time is a big factor for all of us, especially now as we're kind of working in this blended work-home life environment where everything merges into one. And yet I think it's one of the biggest gifts you can give to yourself. It's about putting yourself in the middle, in the center, and saying what's important for me, and making this something that you do. Now, for us busy people, that can be quite challenging. So simple things as your next cup of coffee, take it out into your back garden or on your balcony and just sit without any other devices, no phone, no iPad, no book. Just sit, enjoy the cup of coffee, watch the surroundings. That can be enough of self-reflection, or just reflection on the day, that you can master or build into your time. And for others, it could be a meditation, or it could be journaling every morning. So it takes all different forms. And I think it's about finding what works for you and how you can build that into your busy schedule. But I think that the very first part comes with you deciding to do it. And I would say start small. And then if you find that's working, build up into something a bit bigger.
From that point of view as well, do you find that there's particular behaviors that great leaders have? Are there particular behaviors that you think a leader needs to have in order to really flourish? Because I suppose, you mentioned there, having the reflection, taking the time out, being quite focused on these, on where you want to go, are things that I'd imagine that a strong leader needs. But are there any others that you think are really important behavioral wise?
Yeah, I think for me, it's about becoming more conscious of yourself and how you're leading. is part of becoming a great leader. So that, of course, starts with yourself and being really understanding of yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, what your stressors are. You can go in and buy like a vacuum cleaner and you'll get a manual on how to use it. But rarely do we get a manual on how to work with your peer. So creating your own manual on how to work with me. So I would create a manual of how to work with Debbie, and that would outline, what are the best way to work with Debbie? What's my stressors? What's my strengths and weaknesses? So for a leader to understand that takes, some time to look through those strengths and weaknesses. And 360s can help with that, but also gaining feedback from others. I think another one is, as a leader, knowing where they're going. So being really clear on their own personal vision and how their values align with that. So when they are working with a company, they know that these two are aligned. So the company's vision and their own vision is aligned and their values are aligned. Because a leader who's aligned to that company vision is going to bring more motivation, more energy, and he's going to be able to empower the staff that's working with them. And so, being really clear on their vision. And a third one would be having this growth mindset. So being open to looking at themselves and understanding some of those unconscious drivers of behavior. Yeah. And earlier I was mentioning, a leader evolves. As children, we already start to develop, and we may have created some behaviors as kids to protect ourselves and to grow up in that environment. But they may not be serving us so well as a leader in a company. And it's to become aware of some of those unconscious things that we've created so we can let them go and really step into our best selves and our best leader. So having that growth mindset, I think, is very helpful. I also talked about resilience at the beginning. So that still stands, I think, for great leaders and something that is often forgotten. So having a really good self-care practice and taking time out for themselves. Maybe that's just a walk or a jog or some exercise, but finding what's right for you. And not to be underestimated is sleep. Sleep is massive and very often something that we probably put too little importance on. So I think sleep is another area that great leaders place with importance.
Hi everybody, it's Paul Thomas here. I hope that you're well and you're enjoying the podcast so far. Thank you once again for your continued support listening to the podcast. I just wanted to break into the recording to talk to you about a really exciting new partnership that EMEA Recruitment has along with Operation Smile. And as founder of EMEA Recruitment, it's an honour and a privilege to announce this partnership. Personally, I was born with a cleft lip and palate, so the mission of Operation Smile is something that I have a strong personal connection with. It's not an understatement to say that the dentists and surgeons that helped me were life changers. It's not only about the actual operations that take place, the support and care post and pre-operation are beyond value. And from personal experience, I can only say that I'd not be the confident, happy person I am today without this support. I want to help children experience the support and care and skill that I experienced on my journey and hope that we can do this along with Operation Smile. Every 3 minutes, a child is born with a cleft lip or cleft palate, and the mission of Operation Smile is to provide help and support to these children through providing 6,000 medical volunteers across 80 countries who are dedicated to help these children with facial conditions, most commonly cleft lip and cleft palate. More than 200,000 children are born with a cleft every year, and they are often unable to speak, eat, socialise or even smile. However, it can take as little as 45 minutes and cost just €180 or 182 francs for Operation Smile to provide a child with life-changing surgery. Now, in partnership with Operation Smile, EMEA Recruitment is raising valuable funds and aiming to create 100 new smiles to support the organisation to provide free surgeries for children and young adults all over the world. Please help us by donating through the link in the bio or get in touch to see how your company can help get involved too. For the moment, I'll leave you to carry on listening to the rest of the podcast, but if there's anything I can do in terms of answering any questions or finding out how you can help and support EMEA Recruitment and Operation Smile, then please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you once again and enjoy the rest of the podcast.
It's interesting you mentioned sleep there. I was actually listening to an interview with LeBron James a few months ago, and obviously he's a big star, basketball star in America, and he's a big fan of getting a very structured sleep routine. And he was basically saying that if someone came to you and said there was this magic pill that could give you more energy, more drive, more focus, help you achieve more in your life, and just make you a better person, it was absolutely free and would have no side effects whatsoever, would you take this pill? I mean, most people would say 100% yes. And he said, well, the pill is sleep. You know, if you get more sleep, then or get better quality sleep, then all these things will fall into place. But I think it's something that people try to burn the candle at both ends, and it just doesn't work very well. But it's trying to get that routine, I guess, of getting that sleep in, really.
Yeah, exactly. Sleep is super important. Yeah, it's something I do a lot of, or try to.
Because I guess with the things you're talking about here, I think I'd find that most people would agree 100% with what you're saying. You know, I think that everything you've mentioned so far makes perfect sense, and you know, I think most people would love to be able to take on board all of these ways of thinking and working. But you must find that there's a lot of people who like the idea, but then when it comes to actioning this stuff, it is then very hard to put into practice. So is that the biggest hurdle, actually, you know, putting these thoughts into action, or do you find that there's other areas where it's sometimes hard to address these things?
Of course, you've got to make that decision to invest the time into these things, and very often it's, oh yeah, these all make common sense, you know, it's, why wouldn't I do this? But it's really making the time to do it. And I think, you know, people who are, really want to improve or move ahead need to take that time out to look where they're going. It's, you don't set off on a hike just wandering around. You kind of know your destination. So this is just as important, knowing your destination and the various things you need to get there. But I also find, these bring up, sometimes when people come to me, it's not these things they come to me with, it's other things, such as, oh, I'm having problem with my boss or my peers. And really underneath it's sort of, they've been triggered by something. And I love it when they've come to me when they're triggered by something, because I really think triggers are such a gift, because it's pointing us in an area where we need to grow. So it kind of excites me in a way, and it allows, when I'm working with clients, to really look behind what's that trigger. And the things I mentioned before can be a way to start understanding what these triggers are. So understanding, your self-awareness, your strengths and your weaknesses, the areas that you don't like. And so an example of a trigger could be one I had. I got an email from a colleague once, and I was very triggered by it. So I kind of looked into it, and I realized sort of the emotion around it was arrogance. And I thought he was super arrogant writing this email, and it really frustrated me. And after, some soul searching, I realized this was one of my blind spots. It was one of those unconscious drivers of behaviors that I didn't want to look at. And once I realized that, I could then start unpicking it and understanding those drivers and what it was about arrogance that I didn't like, and could learn to embrace it. So often when people come to me, it's for a different problem, but we go back into those areas I mentioned earlier. that are super important, but it just sometimes comes in a different way.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm just interested because obviously a lot of what you're talking about here, I mean, I suppose it relates to your own career as well. I mean, obviously we knew each other when you were working at eBay in the finance field, and your role is now moved into a completely different direction. So did you have a sort of a, say, light bulb moment where you just thought, right, this is what I want to do? Or was it a moment of reflection on a holiday that made you think, okay, I want to take my career in a different direction?
Yeah, I mean, I had 25 years in finance. So I was in my 40s. And like a lot of people at that age kind of get to a point in their career, they're kind of thinking, what's next? For the next sort of the latter half of my career, do I want to be doing the same things? So I had that kind of reflection moment and realized that I wanted something different, but I wasn't really sure what it was. And it allowed me then to work with a coach who helped me see and get clearer with what I wanted. So it was then when I realized the common thread running through my career was also helping and developing people and working in teams and helping develop teams. And that's what gave me a lot of energy. So I realized this was something I wanted to concentrate and learn more about. And that's when I was lucky enough to be able to do my coaching training and then practice coaching while I was still at eBay, and then move on and set up my own business.
Oh, it's really, I mean, it's a great thing to do because, as you mentioned there, I mean, I think a lot of people go through their whole career actually, and might want to change, but are too afraid to make the change because of the impact it may have financially, as much as on their career, if for whatever reason it doesn't work out. But obviously, I think one of the common things we see in when we speak to people on the podcast is that really the successful people like yourself and the other guests we've had on, they have this kind of approach to these challenges and risks that come up, and they're calculated risks, but it's actually, if you've got the drive and you're very positive about what you're going into, and you know that you're going to enjoy what you're going to do, then everything else sort of fits into place. But I think you've got to have the drive and enjoyment of this, and then everything else will tend to work quite well alongside it.
Yeah, and it's a huge challenge to take that leap. I work with coaches now as well who are thinking about it, and other people who want to make big changes. And I think there's a belief there underneath that you can do it, but nevertheless, it's still a big step to take, and can feel very scary at the time. So, and I think once you've made that decision to go forward and to move forward into it, then it becomes easier. But it's that ultimate taking that decision and taking that first step is the hardest. What I found made it easier was just having real belief in myself. And knowing that I would be able to do it, and that I could do it, and I could visualize and see myself doing it. That's really helped take me along that journey as well.
You mentioned you had a coach yourself as well, and you often find that, again, successful people, they surround themselves with great people and learn a lot from them. So I didn't know, is there anybody in your life, either currently or in the past, that's really inspired you to either make this move to a coach, or actually even going back further, inspired you to go into finance? I just wondered if there's anyone that's really been a big inspirational to you through your life at all.
I think for me, I find lots of people inspiring. So I don't pick on one person, because I try to find the inspiring moments in many people that I meet. So I think every person or every situation can provide valuable lessons and inspiring. Just look at, I'm sure any parent can tell you that they've learned lessons and been inspired by their children. So I try to find the lessons in every moment. And There's another thing I do when I'm working kind of with clients, or even with myself. I love this kind of little exercise. So if there's a skill or something I'm missing, I like to identify what that would be. So let me give you an example of this. So of course, as a coach, I've got to learn to market myself and put myself out there, which is a very different skill from when you're in finance. Or maybe not so, depending on where you are. But I had to really let go of being judged, which was quite a challenge for me, I must say. And so I decided to say, okay, well, what is one person who does that quite well? And a person that came to mind was Robin Williams. He has a lot of high energy. He gives himself permission to be fully him. He lets his crazy out and he's not scared of being judged at all. Mm-hmm. So when I'm in that kind of situation where I'm being fearful and kind of maybe holding back, I kind of think to myself, what would Robin Williams do at this point? I maybe don't quite act fully as him, but it does give me, it certainly gives me a little bit more motivation and energy to let myself fully out and be exposed. Mm-hmm. But that's maybe just a small way of how I get inspired by other people.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, and I think you mentioned it there, it's putting yourself out of your comfort zone as well, to do marketing and maybe sort of business development type of work, whilst I think, it would probably be in a small part of your role, let's say, as a finance professional, going out to do when you're setting up a new company on your own and trying to get the promotion behind it and sell the practice. It's a different situation. And I mean, was there any ever point where you felt like giving in? And then if there was, how did you overcome that?
Yeah. I mean, when you're working by yourself, it can be a challenge. And certainly, I'd lie if I said I didn't have those kind of thoughts sometimes. I come from this corporate environment where I worked with a team and many people, and then I'm now this coach by myself as a solopreneur. It can get really lonely. And so I was lucky enough to also work with the Coach Federation. So I had sort of a team there, and I now have a business partner who I work with, and that's really helped. I'm somebody who does need to work with and collaborate with people. So doing it just by myself was really hard. And there was some black moment times for sure, where it's hard to keep motivated, inspired all the time. And I think because I love nature, I like running, those, have helped me massively to sort of keep that motivation up, but also reaching out to people and just seeing how they did it or collaborating with people has really helped. So I need that energy with different people to help me move on.
Well, I think it's aligned to what we were talking about earlier, the energy, but having fun and being really identifying that this is really what you want to do, and that will help. Hopefully, you get to where you want to be as well. And I think that these are all things that are vital on that side of things. I wondered actually, obviously, I know a big part of the process when you go through it with clients is making sure they're having fun in the process of doing the work with you. I mean, obviously, I guess that's different for every client you have on. But how do you structure that? To make these things obviously informative, things that people learn from, but also where they have fun as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to have fun in our lives, haven't we? Otherwise, why are we living, really? So yeah, especially when I'm working with teams, I like to build in some fun exercises. So for me, it's not working with PowerPoint or death by PowerPoint, not another meeting like that. I try to build in these exercises where you really get to experience the sort of learning outcomes that we've agreed on. So it's getting people out of their head into a different environment, maybe using movement or reflection or pair work or nature or dancing, music, something really different. So that they're having this experience and yet learning something. And so the magic also comes when we come together and debrief and really understand how that exercise can also be applied to work and what are some of those learnings there. So, when you get people together in that kind of learning experience, you also learn from each other too. So for me, that creates the fun, it creates that challenge, and something very, very different as well. I had a client or a team I worked with, I took them through this kind of spider web that was standing vertically, and they had to get from one side to the other. And they had various holes they could kind of pass each other through. And the idea was, the whole team had to get from one side to the other, which was, everybody looked at me and said, well, that's impossible. One woman said, well, do you see how big I am? I'm not going to fit through those holes. I can't climb through there. Mm-hmm. So they went from this impossible situation to standing on the other side with big smiles on their face saying, we can do it together when we try. So when you can see that on people's faces, they've had fun, but you also know they've learned so many aspects about working together and what's possible.
Mm-hmm. No, it's good to hear. And as you say, I think one of the things that people have really missed a lot over the last 15, 16 months is that team dynamic. I mean, I know video calls, they do serve a purpose, but it doesn't replace the being actually physically in the team with people, and I think it's one of the things that I think a lot of people are just looking forward to getting back, even if it's just a few days a week, to having that team dynamic to things and feel like you're working towards a common goal is something that's is very is inspirational, that helps people enjoy what they're doing, as you mentioned. And I think within at the start of that answer, you actually mentioned about technology, PowerPoint presentations and so on. And it almost seamlessly got me thinking about technology and actually time and change management aligned to all of that. Because I think, whilst there's a lot of positives from technology, I think at the same time, it is also a very big drain on our time and our focus. You have emails and social media, and now there's obviously BI and data that are playing a big part in this. So I didn't know, do you think it's going to, as technology just continues to impact on everybody's life, do you think it's going to change your model or the approach at all of how people can be great leaders?
And certainly how I work with technology, I mean, like some of these assessments we use is based on a lot of data that has to be validated, etc. So that's allowing us to really see what are some of the behaviors, the tendencies from great leaders, and utilize that as a tool to help others grow. And how I also see it is, embracing it in a way where we can use for self-learning or as pre-work or post-work to a common training session. So where they can really be guided in the areas where they may have skills missing. So it can kind of be automated. And yet I still can't see a way out of really connecting. Like you say, we're really social beings, and connection is really key. There's a lot of creativity that can come from connecting. And I think that becomes a little harder when we're just relying on data or virtual. So I still see there's a place for this social connection. Yeah, I think, when I look at like the younger generation, they're going to have to learn different skills because they're so used to connecting virtually or on social media, etc. So there's going to be a shift in the type of skills and the way we connect, I think.
No, I agree. I mean, I think it's one of those things that Yeah, I mean, we see it in when we're going through recruitment processes, and it's a generational thing now. Where actually, the younger generation often now don't make phone calls anymore. It's more either texts or WhatsApp or or emails, and it's a different way of looking at things now. But a lot of the time I do feel quite old now, when you start to see all this stuff happening. But I don't know if you've ever seen there's a documentary called The Social Dilemma. I don't know if you've
Yes.
that was a bit of an eye opener for me. I never realized actually the amount of impact that the social media can have and how it can be tailored to you as the individual without you really noticing it. That was it was quite a scary thing, really.
Yeah, and yet you could use that same technology to help and develop people at the same time. There's has been a lot of help for maybe people who've had trauma. They find it much easier to be able to speak to a coach who's a robot, as opposed to a coach in person, because they can open up easier. It feels safer in some ways for them. So I think that there's still opportunity for that that data and that the AI to provide us with some great ways forward too.
No, I agree. I think it's if it's used in the right way, it's a great tool which can give a lot of advantages to businesses and our personal lives as well. It's and I think obviously we're talking a lot about people here, and I think we can't be on a recruitment podcast and not really ask you a question related to recruitment. But I was thinking actually of asking you around, obviously as part of coaching leaders, do you think, are there any practices that you tend to advise leaders to look at when they are growing, expanding the team, things they should be aware of when they're taking new people on or developing people?
I think, when you are growing or developing or looking to recruit people into a team, I think what's really key is to think about what your non-negotiables are. And for me, that's like, what is the culture in this team? What's the kind of attitudes that you want? Those kind of more soft skills that maybe are harder to change straight away. I mean, I think we can quickly develop some technical skills and we can learn processes and policies, etc. But people's attitudes are take a longer time to change, and you want them to fit in with the company culture as well. Think of the time when I did work with eBay, a very dynamic environment, where change was at the heart of it. And if you're somebody who likes a very stable environment, that's going to be really challenging. So I think, what are your non-negotiables? And also, how much time are you willing to work with this person, guide them and support them and develop them? Because that's going to define the type of person you're wanting to bring into that team. I think that's really important. And the other thing is just be aware of your own biases. These creep up and you don't even know it. So, it can be so easy to get a clone of ourselves, but I think the best teams are a little more diverse. And, this is when the coaching skills come in for leaders, is really that self-management in any kind of recruitment process around what your own biases are and manage those and be aware of them. And also really be open to listening. Often we go in with lots of questions in an interview process, for instance, and I like to have just maybe a few questions and be really open to listening what that person is saying and be really curious what's important about them telling you this, and get curious and more curious about their answers. Because I think that's when you learn a lot more about a person.
No, I agree. I think the listening skill is something that's it's almost a bit of a dying art, really, these days, especially, with all the demands on our attention, we're going back to social media and so on, when you're often when you're sitting at your desk, you're talking to somebody, but you've got one eye on emails, one eye on the messages coming in from Teams and all these kind of things. And it's very, to be able to 100% fully listen to people is becoming more and more challenging as time goes on. But I think with you recognizing that being a key strength, do you think that helps you a lot when you were growing your business? We went going back to the, where you're outside your comfort zone with the business developments and marketing, knowing that things like listening were vital. Do you think that played a big part in the success of getting the business off the ground?
Yeah, I mean, you might hear my cat in the background. We have to deal with everything nowadays, eh? So yeah, I mean, of course, when I'm looking to work with the various different clients, being able to listen to them and what their needs are. So it's really critical to understand what my clients' needs are. And if I don't fully listen to them, I can end up like misunderstanding what they need. And I might not be the right person for them. So for me, I want my clients to have success. And I want to give them the best, path towards that. So I need to understand, where they are now, where they want to go. And it's where listening becomes super important, and curiosity. Well, of course, as a coach, curiosity is key in everything I do.
Well, I thought just an interesting question for you, Debbie, because you come across as very very calm, very considered, very clear in your answers. And I was wondering, is there anything that really gets you flustered, or are you always very calm and measured in your approach and things?
Oh, good question. Well, you see, I'm an ultra runner, so I can run for miles and miles and miles. That gets my frustrations out.
How far can you? What does that mean, the ultra runner? How far can you go?
Well, this year I'm doing a race along Wales called the Dragon's Back Race, and it's about, gosh, I should know the distance, but it's about 360 kilometers, 6 days.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a big one. Yeah. So yeah, that gets rid of a lot of frustrations. And I'm only human, but I generally am fairly calm. And when I'm working with clients, I also bring what I need into the energy of that team or that system that I'm working with. So even though I might appear kind of calm, I can bring that hard energy that maybe is needed to shift the team or the client, or that I've been known to, maybe shout when it's needed. But it's knowing what's needed at that time and being able to bring it and having the courage to bring it. So that's, I think, when it becomes most effective.
Oh, that's great to hear. I mean, I think I'm quite envious of your ability and the distance running. I mean, I think I did a half marathon, 2 years ago, and I thought that was good. But so I think the thought of doing a 6 days running scares me quite heavily. So but I think that's pretty impressive. I don't know, have you seen a documentary called Run and Become? I don't know if you've seen that, but it might be interesting for you. It's It's in New York. They do this every year, and it's essentially it's ran over 40 days. But it's I think it's pretty much a marathon a day for 40 days. I watched that a couple of years ago, and I was amazed by the fact that the winners of this were often, let's say late 60s, early 70-year-olds people. I was like, wow, this is really, really impressive. So it takes a lot to be able to do that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot about a mindset as well, because you're embarking on something, no matter the distance, but you're embarking on something that is uncertain, and it's about the belief that you can do it, and really believing that you can at the beginning. Of course, you're going to put the work in and everything necessary to be successful, but I truly believe it's that belief that's going to get you through it. And I've seen that time and time again with people, not only in my running, but when I coach clients. If they have that belief, it's kind of central thread that runs through it, that's going to get you to the end goal. So I love bringing my kind of running analogies into my coaching and the work I do. There's so many lessons in there.
Yeah, no, that's really Really impressive. I think it's been excellent to talk to you today, Debbie. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I've taken a lot from it because I'm a big fan of the the life coaching and transformation coaching model. I think a lot of people, if we're trying to get better at the gym, are more than happy to pay a personal trainer to be able to lift more weight or to run a bit further, over the course of a year. But but a lot of people don't necessarily think of getting a life coach or transformation coach to help them as a person. But I know a lot of people who have and have really had the benefits of it. So it's been really interesting to hear about your model and how it's worked and the things that's got you to this place really today. So I think it's been great to speak to you through this, Debbie. I obviously, if the network wants to connect with you, what's the easiest way they can do that?
Yeah, so you can check out my website. It's permanentbeta.com. So permanentbeta, BETA.com. So embracing your imperfection, really.
Well, I mean, what we'll do, we'll add that to the podcast promotions, when it's going around, so make it easy for people to link into that as well. And I think then that will help with the communication on that side as well. So, but that huge thanks again, Debbie. Really appreciate your time, and obviously enjoy the rest of the day. And good luck with the running. Yeah.
Thanks very much. It's been great speaking with you, Paul.
Thanks. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. If you'd like to reach out to Paul or myself, please feel free to send a connection through on LinkedIn. And if you'd like to listen to previous episodes of the podcast, you can find them all at our website, www.emearecruitment.eu.